unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other world. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Hello and welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening. It's always a great honor and a pleasure to be able to share time in this manner with you, reaching together in a moment from wherever we may be across the wide plain of the earth. What a beautiful time and ability, and for us to share this platform of truth. I just want to thank all of the people that work behind the scenes to make Revolution Radio such an awesome platform for truth and seeking. It's been a great pleasure to be part of this family for so very long and to watch the studio grow together with all of the different hosts and all the different opinions and perspectives. It's just an awesome thing, and I'm glad to be part of it. But this evening, I'm joined by my good friend Brett Thomas. We are preparing for what is quickly approaching the second conference that we've had, that Sacred Word Publishing, and this one not interrupted by C19 and the whole theme of, as far as what was a pandemic. And so hopefully times, I know there's still odd and weird things going on out there in the world, but at least here it seems things have settled down somewhat to a semblance of normality. And so we're going to be able to come together May 26th through the 28th here in what is Dunwoody, Georgia, which is a suburb on the outskirts of Atlanta. And I'll be joined by many of our friends and authors and different individual researchers and seekers. And Brett will be amongst the platform of presenters that'll be coming. Myself, of course, I'll be there. My son also, and um, my awesome daughter-in-law Joy. She'll be hosting the conference for Sacred Word Publishing and Sacred Word Revealed, and our good friend author Gary Wayne and Dr. Joy, who do AMAs with my kids on a regular monthly basis, and Noel Hadley and W. Kent Smith and Diane Cover and others will be here. Zach Mason presenting on the different themes that they are researching in connection to the end times and to current events and prophecy and how it's all coming to life. Sheila and Jeremiah Skiba will be joining us. I don't know if you have seen the updates, but as far as Rob's work, it's continuing on. Sheila just wrote a book about the medical establishment and the trials and tribulations that she has gone through since the passing of Brother Rob, and so she'll be sharing um, that with us during the conference as well. And Friday night will be a memorial. There will be an open book out for people to sign and to share their thoughts about Rob and his influence and touch upon their lives, and also to just share some words of condolence with both Jeremiah and Sheila, and anything that you'd like to share in memorial to Rob, you will have that opportunity. And so it'll give a lot of people a chance for closure, as you know, many of us are still going through the whole PTSD of those events and those times. And many were directly influenced by the loss of family members from, you know, the outbreak and the outreach of all of that. But anyways, Brett, how are you, brother?
I'm doing good. I feel it's an honor to be here, my friend.
Yeah, for me as well, brother. And gosh, we've been friends and acquaintances for such a very long time now, and have been doing shows on, you know, bi-monthly uh, for very, very long time. I don't even know how many shows we've done together now, but I think we've done a lot of incredible work, and certainly we've been confirming witness for each other and the work that we do. And if you would please do share, you know, the books that you've already written, your website, social media, anything of that nature, and also what you're going to be talking about at the conference for those that will be joining us in attendance.
Sure. I'm looking forward to it. Iron sharpens iron, doesn't it, Zen?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of times, you know, but when you are dealing with people that don't really want to listen and only want to argue, then that's a whole different thing. But for people that are true watchmen and true seekers, when you come together and share truth with one another, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I think it'll be very beautiful once we all get in that conference hall and we're all
Yeah,
talking
absolutely.
together
I agree.
and we're on the same level. I mean, you got nothing but open ears and willingness to listen, which I really think is great. And then
Yeah,
that's how we do sharpen each other.
right.
My first two volumes, and they're fairly large because I have to split them in half. But one is called The Way of Cain, and one is called The Tower of Babel, and that is the second one. Both of them are more or less a comparison of the times of Noah to the times we have right now. And it's fascinating once you dig into not only the Bible, you dig into a lot of different alternative texts, and you start to see how, you use discernment, of course, but you start to see how they all start to correlate and parallel what's actually going on today. And it's fascinating because Jesus was right. And my website is mysterybabylon.com. It's pretty simple and it's now updated. And I do have a little more work on it, but I've been working on my third volume, which I hope to at least get out the first half of it by the end of the year. I wanted to get it out by the conference. I tried so hard, but everything else I had to move, all these things going on. So it should be out by the end of the year. It's going to be rather large. At least the every half is about 400 pages. So it's quite a bit of work that I put into it.
Yeah, you definitely release some extensive volumes, and I do as well. Your books are, you know, about page size, and so that is a lot of information. And I always write, you know, about between 350 and 400 plus pages
Okay.
myself. But of course, I'm publishing in larger font because my eyes being as old as I am, they get tired easy, and I like to be able to read without taxing my mind. And sitting out in the elements, it's certainly like a moment of church, for me, to read the scripture and to be outside in the sun and with the elements. What a beautiful thing. But yeah, my most favorite times, without a doubt.
Yeah, as we get older, there's more challenges, but we can still do it. It just takes a little longer, right?
Yeah, definitely. So tell us, as far as this newest volume, what is the majority focus, the introduction, and the theme of your conclusion? And then also, what you're going to be speaking to the listening audience about during your presentation.
Okay. I'm being a little subtle about getting into the third volume. I like to get it more of a surprise when it comes out because
Yeah, of course.
but I will say that it entails a lot of the things that the first two obviously didn't cover or really didn't find a space to cover. So I would always have other thoughts and other things that we put together that needed a place and needed a voice. And I thought this would be a great place to do it. How I do it was more of a chronological order this time, rather than just saying there's two parallels between the ancient times of Noah and the times of today. I start basically at the very beginning at the Garden of Eden and go on from there. And it's more of an expose on the Serpent Seed system from that very point on. So it's quite entailed because there's a lot of history. And I get into the giants and where they went after the garden and what happened to them after the flood. And there's a lot to it, but I believe these are a lot of things that have been either silenced or just fallen into the dustbins of history that really kind of need an out. And once they're out and once they be able to actually see it, the correlations will just be endless, in my opinion. So that's why I'm so excited to get it out. But it's just there's so much in our world that needs to be put together in logical ways. It just takes a while, and right, Zen? It just I know what I'm talking about because the writing part is just sometimes it's rather difficult.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said, especially when you're chasing down these themes. And both you and I, and also Dr. Joy, she writes quite a lot in detail about, as far as the seed of Cain and the establishment, the order, the family, or, as the New World Order call themselves. But chasing all that down from where we are, as far as the garden to Armageddon, Eden to Armageddon, and Genesis to Revelation. All it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of work. Even, the Bible, of course, covers all that, from the wheat and the tares. Um, Christ said, let both grow together until the time of the end.
Right.
And then at the time of the end, he would send forth his angels to gather the tares for burning and the wheat for preservation. And so there's a lot of history to be brought out and shared. And so few people even know about these things.
Yes.
And that's what makes our task so difficult. Is it's not just tracing it all down, but having to educate people and help them to make sense of it all, and then also to bring forth that skeleton key to unlock it all. That's the most important. And so it's a lot of effort. I've written several books on these topics, as you have as well, and so a lot to cover. But people are appreciative, and it's awesome now that they are willing to listen and to check it out and to learn. When it seems like maybe a decade ago there were few willing to go there. There was so condemned, and people were afraid to even open themselves to the possibility. They're preachers and pastors and people of with authority, condemning it. They would, they were willing sheeple. They wouldn't
Yeah.
even look at it. So
Yeah, I think a lot of people are actually seeing a lot of strange things coming about and coming to pass, and that's what's sparking a lot of this curiosity. People on both sides are trying to keep things under wraps, and I don't think it's working very well because we're seeing prophecy come through right all around us. So I think that's one important spark that we have on our side.
yeah, that's, I think, one of the most important themes is that we see in the times that we're living in that the headlines are confirming
Hmm.
prophecy and the research that we've done. And people can no longer deny, as they have, um, as far as, the existence of the New World Order and the whole veil of the spirit and material worlds collapsing in on each other, merging together. There's like an overlap where the spirit is bleeding into the material world. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of supernatural occurrences. I mean, even the theme of, as far as the extraterrestrials, the ancient aliens, all the disclosure that is coming forth from the government, like these kind of things have been laughed upon. People have been made to look stupid and tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists, all that stuff. Well, the joke's on you now, because it's all been affirmed to be true and that these kind of things have been happening for decades. And of course, we're tying all this to the demonic influence and affirming that this is also going to be part of the strange delusion that the scriptures speak about. And without a doubt, we see the whole theme of the ancient aliens being our creators being affirmed by the Babylonian religions and the New World Order and the Catholic Church. Um, the Vatican declaring that these beings are closer to God than we are, and that we should listen to them and hear what they have to say. I mean, it's like open the door for the great white brotherhood, the ascended masters, um, and so the people are being prepared to bend the knee, to take the mark, and the scriptures certainly speak about all these things.
And I do. I watch those programs like Ancient Aliens, and it's so
Oh
interesting to
yeah,
see that they
got to stay
always
up
seem to
with
go
all that
back to
stuff.
the Anakonai and the Anaki and back to the
Yeah,
times of the sons of God and the fallen angels. And it all seems to go back. They always say, okay, well, what if these angels are actually aliens? Well, what if these aliens were actually those angels? I mean, that's
exactly.
that's that's
Yeah,
the better question to ask. And
right.
of course, they'll
And that's
never.
the reality. That's the true reality. The ancient aliens, the extraterrestrials, they're not from out there. They've been banished here with Earth. With us, they live in the earth, in the bottomless pit, in Sheol, in the hollow earth. I've seen so many programs now, with regard to the ancient aliens. Like I just saw one today that was on the reptilians
Oh yeah.
and the nature of the ancient gods being draconic and the seraphim angels. And yeah, the Bible speaks about this, the seraphim angels being banished, cast out of the heavens, and that the these particular beings, they live in the interior of the earth and have for thousands of years. Like there are civilizations much older than ours within the interior of the earth, and that these people, these Nagas, or
Hmm.
whatever they want to call them, that these cities have been discovered. Like they speak about them in um, even in the Badlands and the Grand Canyon. They said that there was an entire city of what the natives call the lizard people, the indigenous tribes.
Oh yeah.
These lizard people living in Los Angeles, and that their catacombs and all of that had been discovered. And so, yeah, a lot of interesting information coming to light, and people, having to reckon with the history of all of that. G. Kincaid, his disappearance, um, even Phil Schneider, he spoke about creating these deep underground bases and burrowing into the earth to help the government to establish these places. And then having burrowed into an already ancient and existing structure, much like what the Nazis speak about in building their base in Antarctica and what
Mm-hmm.
the Schwabenland,
Mm-hmm.
on an already ancient and existing structure. So a lot of incredible information. I mean, just so much to take in now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so interesting to see how the Nagas and a lot of these, like you said, the serpent people, the American Indians, the indigenous Americans, etc., would always say things how they were serpent-like or reptilian-like, and it's so
Right.
interesting that we do find the Nephilim that were actually they were known for their serpent features when they were actually unfallen angels. So it's and of course we have the serpent himself, with there's some
Yeah,
reason
the
that he was
ancient
referred to
dragon.
as a serpent, and the seraphs had a serpent affiliation, those angels. So it's just so fascinating to me to see how we always talking about serpents for some reason, and of course
Mhm.
something they're going to try to twist it around, but it just seems like, okay, what if these nagas and all these that we're talking about are actually the serpents that were falling and made to live underneath the earth? What if they were the ones that were actually the seraphs?
Yeah, and then even the story of the garden, the seduction of Eve, the beguilement of humanity, and our fall from grace, our ancestors being tempted to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and how the apple became metaphorical and symbolic for a hidden act of sexual lust, and what was the birth of Cain
Mm-hmm.
as the progenitor of these people, and how he was said to be seraphic in appearance. I mean, all these things are, you know, connected to the scriptures and to the word and the things that are unveiled within it, and yet people do not understand. And they've been hiding um, and unknowledgeable. And the truth has been misconstrued for so very long.
Of course, just
And
like just like the Book of Enoch. I mean, they'll try to hide
yeah,
it as long as they can.
right, right. And so now that it's starting to come forth, the Most High is pouring the Spirit out upon all flesh, and so many are starting to see and understand. Um, this is the strange nature of reality and what we are contending with. Paul said, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities, the rulers of darkness and spiritual wickedness in high places. And so that's all very powerful, unless you just don't understand. But when you do, I mean, it is profound, you know.
Right. That's where I think the internet was actually created so they would eventually be able to monitor most of us. I think that was one of the main reasons that the internet came about. Of course, it helps in a lot of ways, But it does help the New World Order agenda too in ways. And I think just a after effect or side effect of actually the internet is this explosion of knowledge where people upload different books and different things that people have not really yet thought of before. I mean, that's where I get a majority of my materials off the internet.
Oh yeah, and there was a time when I had a really good relationship with a individual named Lucas Scantamburlo, who was a Vatican insider, had connections, and would speak to different individuals and had relationships even with several astronauts. But he was at the time talking about the Apollo 20 missions, and um, but anyways, he also spoke about how the internet and fiber optics and even computers, that they were back engineered from the craft that crashed in Roswell
Roswell,
in
I
40.
wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, and so a lot of what we have as technology now is stuff that we were able to attain from um, these, whatever it was that had come out of the skies, the fallen angel technology. And I don't know if you heard about this, but recently both Russia and the United States have claimed of having brought down things from the skies. Like there was that whole story of the weather balloon or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was. They said it was a Chinese spy balloon or whatever. But one of my friends tells me there's something a lot more to that story, and I don't know all the details on it. But even Russia recently spoke about having brought down these kinds of craft.
Mm.
And of course, just in what we are able to see and what the naval officers, because for those of you that are not up on disclosure, and that the Pentagon and the Navy and you know our armed military forces have been reporting their sightings of these, not only UFOs but also USOs, in that these things are able to go enter into the water and dive like submarines.
They have those.
Um,
They have pictures of those, right? They have film of.
yeah, that there was a entire carrier unit with the USS Nimitz, and there was a whole battle carrier group of I don't know how many ships, like 17 or something. It was a large number of ships, but they were all witness to seeing these USOs enter into the water before the battle, this battle group, and also that the pilots, the naval pilots, were trying to chase these things down and to maneuver and to equal their maneuvers across the sky, which they have a capacity that is unbelievable. They could cut a 90-degree angle while flying at thousands of miles an hour, which shouldn't be possible,
Right.
but it is. And there are reports of, these kind of maneuvers taking place. And if they have the capacity to do that, to be able to perform these kinds of maneuvers, because the G forces have to be so high that, most people would not be able to sustain consciousness
Yeah.
while, these kinds of things are taking place. So it's a lot to consider. And the technology, again, if it's true that the internet and fiber optics and computers and other things were sophisticatedly back engineered from these downed aircraft, well, that's certainly something to consider.
Yeah. It only makes sense though too. I mean, why
Yeah, I
does
agree.
technology grow so slowly, and then all of a sudden within the last 50 years we have, phones that are in our hand and we can do practically everything with them.
Right.
It just it
Hmm.
seems too good to be true, and a lot of these things that we have in front of us just don't seem to be real.
Right. And then the other thing before we begin to move on, because I know there's a lot of stuff you want to get into and cover, but I do think it's good for us
That's okay. No, go on. It's
to
interesting.
share like this. But um, the scriptures tell us, as in the days of Noah, and so shall it be with the second coming of the Son of Man. And I think that even the Book of Giants speak about the miscegenation, the genetic corruption of
Mm-hmm.
humanity, the creatures, even the plants, that everything was had gone out uh, out of its way and had been corrupted genetically at a microscopic nature. But and so the scriptures and Christ warns us about the times that we are living in my opinion. And so we see that um, the technologies which may have been lost, that the fallen angels are, in my opinion, guiding humanity to the recreation of a lot of those advances. In that, for whatever reason, they are wanting humanity to be able to succeed in repeating and unfurling such technology, and in this day and age. And so that's kind of what they're guiding and leading people to, because they gave us, or gave humanity in ancient times, access to high level technologies. Even the book of Enoch speaks about the mysteries of heaven and the things, the knowledge, the plants and the herbs, the root cutting, the black magic, and the rituals and um, practicing magic, conjuring devils. I mean, all these kind of things are connected to the fallen ones and to the children of Cain,
Mm-hmm.
of whom they took wives of all which they chose. And so, yeah, lots to be considered.
I I watched one of these programs one time, and it was about how when the Navy actually filmed a few of these UFOs, and it would have slipped by the average person, but the gentleman whose series it was after said he talked to a high-level official, and the high-level official just went to him and says, "You know what these are?" And he goes, "What?" He says, "These are demons." And that was it. And it just would have slipped by the average person. A lot of persons are still stuck on the thought of, oh, okay, it's probably something from beyond our galaxy, whatever. It's something now, But it's just interesting that this high level official would actually reveal that to him, that he knew something and he saw it for
Right.
himself. It's that kind of blew me away once he said that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, they've been hiding these things for so very long. And why the dramatic change now? You know?
Yeah.
And that's something that people have to consider as well, because in my opinion, there's no accidents, and
No.
we have Werner von Braun, when he was working with Carolyn Rosen, and she came out and reported and even spoke to I believe it was the United Nations. She made some official whistle blower. Um, she told everybody about how he had warned her about disclosure. But, anyways, she spoke about how the government, the New World Order, the elites, and that the One World Order, they would utilize not only the coming, as far as disclosure and the aliens and invasion, and also the Blue Beam Project and things of that nature, that they would um, declare that comets were going to destroy the world and all these kind of things, and that these particular themes would frighten humanity so bad that people would fall in line.
Mm-hmm.
They would ask for, government help. They would depend on government for assistance, and they would, just as, what was it, Ben Franklin that spoke about how people would be willing to give up their liberties for security.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so that we see that, and we're moving towards that, and um, so yeah, that a lot of that is coming about.
And then we also have, I think it's Second Thessalonians talking about in the future people will be looking for peace and safety.
Right. Yes.
And we have the safety right there. That is like a crucial element that people are looking for nowadays,
Yes.
safety and security.
Absolutely. Yeah, and also scriptures tell us about peace, and then comes sudden destruction. So,
Yeah, sudden destruction cometh upon them.
right, right.
It's kind of scary.
Mm. Yeah, it can be, if you're not a person of faith,
Right.
in my opinion, because I know that a lot of people, and I know some people that, not being completely secure in their relationship with the Most High, that they are fearful of these things, even, C-19 and other outbreaks and things that, even the financial collapse and the Great Reset and the challenges all that um, are bringing, because, the United States is going to change at some point. We're $30 trillion in debt. They're not even trying to pay off the debt.
No.
They keep pushing the debt ceiling higher and higher. At some point, those people that are borrowing and giving us money, loaning it to us at interest, well, they're going to realize that they're never going to get paid. They're never going to get their money back. And so, why continue? You know, what's going to be the point where they just cut us off? And in that day, the United States is going to be forced to change dramatically, immediately, like bankruptcy court. Um,
Yeah.
and so, what's going to happen then? You
I
know?
think it's like a bank that loans money to a house. If you don't start paying, they're just going to reclaim the house. So all these investors, foreign investors, will just probably demand to take pieces of the United States away.
Oh, yeah. Well, certainly that has already been happening. They've given away whole interstates,
Mm-hmm.
to China, to, the toll roads. They've given away the Bahamas and California deep water ports. Um, so, yeah, the infrastructure is already being given as payment and settlement for debt. And it's ridiculous. We should not be a debtor nation.
No.
We should be in abundantly wealthy and have so much credit that we're able to loan, money to other peoples and nations and earn interest and have that interest be utilized for the development of infrastructure and um, providing healthcare, universal healthcare for our people, education, all these kind of things. But all this is done on purpose. It's
Yeah, we're
purposely.
like one of the last titans that need to be knocked down to
Yeah,
size. And
absolutely.
for the New World Order to take over, they need to knock the United States out of the picture.
Right.
You
Yeah.
can't have people who believe in family, who believe in God especially, and living in smaller communities, helping each other out. And you can't have that because that does nothing for big government. Big government
Right.
needs to have everybody rely on
Dependent.
them. So that's why they need to continue on what they're doing here and to make
Yeah.
everybody poor and reliant.
Yeah, reliant, dependable, and get in line
Mm-hmm.
for your benefits.
Yeah. 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 And the thing that is funny, as you said earlier, Zen, which I really like, take out God as the first element to this takeover, and then you get people reliant on government as their God. And that exactly what happened to this country, like in the last, 50 years. I heard a statistic, it was just very minuscule amount of people still are holding on to a faith. It's amazing nowadays.
Yeah. Um, this nation, I believe that the people are generally God fearing and good people. Of course, we have the terrors and the New World Order and the Satanists and the pagans and all that as part of the leaven. But in the overall, I believe that most of the world is generally good, and most people are generally kind-hearted, God-fearing, and want nothing but the best for themselves and others.
Mm-hmm. I
But
agree.
then the evil is so orchestrated, so strategically embedded into and taking over government from the top down. I mean, they're so powerful they print the money. I mean, that's beyond wealthy when you print the means by which the world buys and sells, barters, and that the supplies of and demands of goods are met. You're doing what Congress, regulating commerce. That's the authority that Congress was given, and yet they usurp this power of the ability to mint coin and to regulate commerce and um, to manage trade,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and that has gotten us into so much trouble.
Yeah.
So much
Another
trouble.
another thing I see is what they mentioned back in Judges, where they talking about every man did what was right in his own eyes. And again, it's another parallel from then to now, and that's what Satan has been using the religion of man, of secular humanism, and all the thoughts that come along with it to usurp the Bible and usurp God himself. And that's been an age-old practice that's been going on even back with the ancient Israelites. They didn't really, they just did whatever they thought was right, and that became the new belief over what God said. And that's basically what we're seeing today. We're seeing that everywhere. So that's another thing that in my view shows us a sign of the end.
Yeah, without a doubt. But anyways, brother, we have already gone 45 minutes into this show. We haven't even begun to touch upon your book and the things that you're writing about. And so um, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to lead the discussion and take over, guiding us down the rabbit hole.
Okay. That's okay. I enjoy when we kind of get off wherever we go, because it's
Yeah,
always interesting.
I do
So,
too.
very good. Oh, and I was going to say that a lot of the things that we talked about are actually going to be in the new volume. It's just, like I said, there's just so much there. It's just hard to talk about one
Right.
thing because it's more of a subset of
Yeah.
everything. So, but I'm excited about the conference because what I'll be getting into the conference will be the seven-headed beasts of Revelation, and I'm very excited about what the research shows and what I have found to be the beasts of the earth and the beasts of the water, and I'm excited to bring that to everybody at the conference. So that's what I'll be
Awesome.
speaking about. Yeah, I'm excited.
That's great.
Okay. We've been going for a while here in my first volume, The Way of Cain, and this is the part 2. This is the second book. And what we talked about last time we got together was the times just before the flood. And I know Zen and I both look at the different amount of sources and texts that are out there besides just the Bible, because in my view, you really kind of, it's good to have with discernment. It's good to have these other sources to help shed light on a lot of interesting thoughts and quotes that in Bible sayings. So that's what these first 2 books have a lot of different sources, the Cave of Treasures, the Book of Enoch, etc. in there. So just for anybody who hasn't been listening lately, right now we were talking about the Cainites and what they've been doing to help destroy right before the flood. They were doing everything they can to bring everybody into their same party. They were having little carnivals. They were walking around trying to seduce other people into doing the same thing they were doing, etc. And we talked, Zen and I, about the Genesis 3:15 prophecy, which stated about the seeds of the serpent and the seeds of Adam and how they will be at enmity with each other. And we've also mentioned how at this time, the fallen terrestrial angels found no better reason to corrupt mankind is to save their own fate. So let me explain a little bit. What they thought they can do is, if they would corrupt and compromise every seed of Adam out there, then that prophecy could not be fulfilled.
Right.
Because there needed to be a pure, God does not want impurity, obviously. So there needed to be a pure seed of Adam to help bring out the Messiah into existence. So if they figured during this time before they flood, if they could corrupt every human male out there and even the female, anybody to get the seed from actually passing on to where it's supposed to, they figured they could win. You know, that prophecy would not come true. The Savior would not be born, and there would not be a redemption for the sins at the garden.
Right.
So these Cainites were a big part of this whole corruption process, and they found that they could do anything they can to bring down these Adamites that were hiding away. Okay, the best place that a lot of these sources say that they were hiding is up at actually in Mount Hermon, famously known for the angels coming down and up, worshiping God and falling actually in that same mountain. Right, Zen?
Yes, yes. And that mountain represents, the seat of rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
And in the mythologies, it represents the home of the demigods, the place from where they looked upon humanity, watched, like even the scriptures speak about the Mount of the Congregation, that it was from there that even, the Most High and the heavenly angels, they watch and look down upon the affairs of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really understand that the Mount of the Congregation is this magnetic lodestone mountain said to be at the center of the earth, and that it's taller than any other mountain of the world. It's the place where Christ was taken, to this exceedingly high mountain, as the scriptures describe, and that from there he was able to see all the kingdoms of the world, and that Satan offered to, for him to have rule over all these nations if he would just bow down and worship to him. But of course, this Christ said, my kingdom is not of this world. But um, understanding the physical structure of the world, it makes sense that the sides of the north is this place at the North Pole, at the Mount of the Congregation, the sides of the north, because all the sides of the physical firmament, the structure of the dome, as they rise towards the north. And then it is in the north that they unite in apex, that they, becomes this pinnacle, and that there, where Polaris is located, that is the center of the vaulted dome of the earth. And that is also the place where the Most High is seated, where the heavenly temple is located. Um, and so, you know, understanding all of that, as far as Isaiah 40:22, he sits on the circle of the earth, um, and that the earth, the curtain, the heavens spread out as a curtain above them, form in shape a tent. It's amazing because this is lost knowledge too, and this is the theme of this truth has been encoded into the book of Enoch and into Psalms and Isaiah and other scriptures for so very long. And yet the modern world has lost this ancient understanding, and believe now that the earth is spinning at 1,037 miles an hour, which is faster than the speed of sound, and a bullet shot from a pistol. It's absolute lunacy what they have indoctrinated us into believing in this day and age.
Yeah, and we don't fly off, right? We stay
Right,
fully intact.
right. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, yeah, how do the oceans stay perfectly still,
Yeah.
level, quiet, and serene? It doesn't make any sense, and yet so many people believe and buy into this system and to this ideology, and they have no idea how it skews them, and hides the truth of what really is, uh, from them, just because of their buying into this belief system.
Well, you can't have anything like a dome, like anything like that, because that might even show there's an existence of a higher being.
Right.
You have to have it just develop on its own and just decide to break off and explode and start spinning around on its own. And
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah, all
Well,
random, no intelligent design.
right?
There's no God, it all just came about random. DNA is just an accident of the universe. Right.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, every time I look out, I see a tree. I just think, how can that just decide to form on its own and
Right.
then work symbiotically with living creatures to
Yes.
provide that balance, And then I look at the weather and I think, okay, how did the weather come about?
Hmm.
How did the
Yeah.
weather come about and able to do what it does? It just blows
Right.
my mind to think that
Yeah.
it could have come on its own. No, I can't accept it.
Right.
It's too much.
We're 1 minute from break, Brett. So
Okay.
just wanted to give you a heads up, and just to let everybody know that um, we'll have break for about 5 minutes, and we'll be back at two after the top of the hour. But we do appreciate everybody listening in. We hope that you're enjoying our rant and, catching up on current events. It's always a good time.
Oh, speaking of rants, Zen, are we going to have that roundtable with Dr. Joy?
I do believe so, but let me get with Joy on that.
Awesome. Or something would be fun.
Yeah, because she's the boss. So. All right. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
We will not comply with the institution's sick illusion. No, it won't be televised. Welcome to the revolution. We will not comply with the institution's sick illusion. No, it won't be televised. Welcome to the revolution. They're trying to dumb us down. Don't want us to make a sound. We gotta get out of now, 'cause it's a revolution.
Revolution.radio, freedomslips.com.
Join me at Revolution Radio, Studio B, at 11 a.m. on Saturday for Free Association, when we take a look at philosophy, spirituality, psychology, social issues, and geopolitics. It's every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Studio B at freedomslips.com.
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
If you think for 1 second that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourselves. Because we know who they are and what they do. This is what they do, and we must fight back. You can torture us and bomb us. Fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us.
Good evening.
Are you awake yet? I hope.
We've tried for years and years to use passive resistance and loud voices to make a change. The time is over. Your governments around the world have no other goal than to decimate your entire existence. The the hands of the bankers and the elites. The war is coming, and it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Denial is not a choice anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
All right. Back, everybody. For a second hour, I am your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio. And as always, it's a great honor and a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I'm joined by my good friend and author, Brett Thomas. We were speaking about Sacred Word Revealed, the conference, which is coming up in 2023, May 26th through the 28th. We'll put a link to it in the chat room. But as I said, it's going to be an awesome gathering. The speakers, we did have Nathan Reynolds is not going to be able to join us. So, but, you can go here to the sacredwordrevealed.com website to get more information and also to get tickets and to join us. It would be awesome to be able to meet all of you face to face, share time, conversation, and meal, to break bread, and to just, even to share hug. I mean, what an awesome thing it's going to be to put an actual face to the various chat names that we've come to know over the years. And so, and all the moderators, I know a lot of people are good friends, as far as Noble and Lisa, and the Chavez's will be there. There's going to be awesome, really good people there. But anyways, turn it back over to you, Brett. Let's get into it, brother.
Okay, I wanted to say I'm excited about it too. I remember the last time when we had it, and I was there, and it was such a nice feeling to just have everybody who just has a like mind and just wants to talk about the same things we talk about every time. It's fascinating. It's a breath of fresh air, quite honestly, in my opinion.
Agreed, brother. Absolutely.
All right. Okay, so we're getting into the time just before the flood, I was saying. And one thing that's always interests me is when the Bible says that women were born to them and daughters were born unto them. It's Genesis 6:1. Some of these other texts talk about that there were a lot of daughters born, but not a lot of sons. And it's interesting in this year, and I'll explain why in just a minute at this time. But back then, they had mothering instincts, they wanted to have children, etc., but there just weren't enough men that were able to provide that for them. So that was another reason why these Canaanite daughters would go after the Sethite men. You think about it, that, okay, well, they had their own Canaanites and everybody who lived down and participated in the same dealings that they were going with, but the Sethites, as they were called, the Adamites, but they were known as Sethites for the most part. And we talked about them trying to relocate to Mount Hermon just to stay pure. And there's a lot of talk in these ancient texts about how they would be up in the mountain and these women would be down in the valley below, the Canaanites especially, trying to lure them down. Now, the thing that's fascinating to me, and again, this is just maybe something for speculation, but we think about that parallel nowadays, and you've heard about all this demasculization of men through soy products and all these things, and I can't help but think, could there have been some kind of parallel that, and today we hear so much about men not even actually able to use their facilities to breed children much because of all these things that you touch receipts and a lot of the food, like I said, with the artificial estrogen that we eat and a lot of things that are actually trying to stop fertility. What's your thoughts about that, Zen?
I think that Satan has an agenda to confuse the genders and to, make men effeminate and also to make women masculine. And that he's doing this because he is against the whole theme of, as far as holy matrimony and a man and a woman coming together to be one flesh, and there being, as far as the natural order of the sexes, that the whole thing of Baphomet, where this goat creature is a unification of both sexes, and that the whole transgender and all of that, and also, I also believe that putting aborted fetal tissue from both sexes into the different snake bites, that this is also purposeful in causing confusion among the upcoming generations, and that
Okay.
the whole woke thing and all of that is part of it. In
I
my
heard they
mind,
put the fetal start. Excuse me for interrupting you. I'm sorry. I heard they put the aborted fetal tissue in vaccines too. And that was
well,
one.
that's what I'm talking about. But
Oh,
yeah,
snake bites. Okay, I get you.
we gotta be careful of saying anything
Oh,
like.
I hear what you're saying. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, it's all right.
Okay. All right. So yeah, so it's just interesting. I think that there's some kind of parallel. I also think that there's the New World Order is just deciding that there's just too many of us, and they just want to reduce it, like when we went to see what was those things that
Georgia
we saw? Huh?
the Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah, the Guidestones, and they said
Yeah,
it was 500 million would be a good number.
right. Yeah, you were talking also about there being a predominance of women in the ancient times, and how men, took on multiple wives, and even the angels did that. Um, but I think a part of that also had to do with the decimation, because there was uh, the beginning of war and the murder and the slaughter of other humans. Like Cain killing Abel. The seed of the serpent, they began to conduct themselves in such manner. They were taught by the fallen angels how to create weapons of war. The whole thing of metallurgy, um, and how they were able to create swords, and who knows, what kind of technology they gave them. But without a doubt, the skill set of a blacksmith, that did not just come about. It wasn't
Right.
just learn, oh, we're gonna throw this stone in with this stone, and and tin, a little bit of a tin here creates steel. No, that was knowledge that was passed on by the angels. And it was knowledge that them giving that to humanity made God very upset, disturbed him greatly, because they
Right.
were not supposed to teach those kind of secrets to humanity. And so giving the seed of Cain that kind of an advantage and that kind of power over the other people and other races, I mean, even like the whole thing of, gunpowder, when that was created, and how they were able to make that as a catalyst for shooting bullets, and how guns gave the next, those people that had them full ability to slaughter entire cultures, to bring forth genocide in a manner that wasn't possible previously. And so, that's a lot of blood on the hands of those that revealed that kind of stuff to humanity.
Oh, yeah.
And so we can understand why it was that God said and condemned them, to die the death of a man. They lost their eternity. I mean, that's a harsh judgment, to be wiped out, annihilated, as if you had never been. That's a severe sentence.
And that's something that they probably feared the most because, being an angel at one time or in that angelic realm, that must have been
Without a doubt.
must have been the supreme insult to be lowered to the life of a human, that type of existence. And then having their lives taken away or having to be killed by or taken out by a flood was just probably the worst thing in the world to them.
Oh, without a doubt. Having judgment. I mean, the angels, they were believed to be gods. They were treated as gods. They would take wives of any earth woman that they wanted, and their children were these high and mighty, these proud giants, that ruled over. They were the greatest warriors. They were the demigods,
the mighty men,
for the men of names, the whole entire mythologies which exist even to this day and age, are about their children. Gilgamesh, we still have the stories of Gilgamesh, the Book of Giants, the Nimrods and Og. I mean, yeah, that's pretty mighty.
Yeah, it's especially Og and Sihon. I mean, it's kind of fascinating that they're even in the Bible. I mean, with one, people can knock it down to, they're just in those false texts, but they're even in the Bible, which is interesting. Another comment I wanted to make. It's interesting how you were saying how all of these metalworking and such actually were so prevalent in the line of Cain, which kind of tells us quite a bit, because they must have been consorting with these fallen terrestrial beings to begin with. And we have Tubal Cain was known for his artificer and known for his metalworking. Yeah. And even the name Tubal Cain, from what I found, is meaning the perfection of Cain. So if you think about it, Cain was the first murderer, and we have Tubal Cain coming around with his tools and weapons of war that he helped to create. And there you go. Now we're being able to, as a human race, kill people with a lot more precision and accuracy. So they're perfected Cain's work as the first murderer. Right. It's interesting. Okay. Yeah. Anything more you wanted to say on that, Zen? Or?
I would also say that, from the primary Adamic literature, we learned that the children of Cain were also given the knowledge of how to create beverages, alcohol, beer, spirits, that they were also the first ones to set up, as far as taverns, bars, to set up prostitution, as far as also to put these things together, to set up, taverns where they sold meal and provided comfort. So all these things were taught to them by the fallen angels. And that's why they were judged so severely, so harshly, that they would be annihilated. As
Can I read something from the Cave of Treasures?
yeah, please.
The book of the Cave of Treasures says exactly what Zen was saying here, and it's very quick, but and lasciviousness and fornication increased among the children of Cain, and they had nothing to occupy them except fornication. Now they had no obligation to pay tribute, and they neither prince nor governor, and eating and drinking and lasciviousness and drunkenness and dancing and singing to instruments of music, and the wanton sporting of the devils, and the laughter which affordeth pleasure to the devils, and the sounds of the furious lusts of men neighing after women. And Satan, finding his opportunity in this work of error, rejoiced greatly. So it's pretty much exactly what you were saying, and
right.
that's where we get a lot of the things in this parallel that we see today.
Yeah, that's another important part. The whole theme of music.
Oh, yeah.
Entertainment, and also, the slaughter of innocents. Like the Colosseum where they killed people. I mean, those kind of things also for sport. That those are the things that the children of Cain had created. The Colosseums, gladiator works, and things of that nature. So,
Oh, yeah. And they had a lot of abortion back then too, right? They had the concoctions of mandrake, right?
Yeah, it even spoke about that the children, the men of the line of Cain, that they would have one woman for a pleasure, and they wouldn't allow that woman to get pregnant, and they would keep one to bear children and to pass on generations. And that's what they did. That's why, even in the story of Lamech,
Yeah.
that he had two wives, Ada and Zillah, and one was for pleasure.
That's the
And
best
Zillah,
example I can see.
Yeah, she wasn't supposed to become pregnant, and when she did, she gave birth to twins, to Tubal-Cain and to Nama, and that it would be through Nama that the seed of Cain would be preserved post-flood.
Yeah, it's quite the interesting thought. And with these other ancient sources, that helps us to clarify a lot of the Bible, especially these early chapters in Genesis, where you have a few things like Lamech, the song of the sword, Lamech crying, and you don't really understand what he's so upset about. But if you look at some of these other sources, and if they're all in this book, in my volume here, but you'll be able to see what that he was so upset about, and in my opinion, why the Bible found it significant enough to actually include it in there.
Right.
I believe, I'll just go off the topic a little bit, or a little ahead of our speaking, but what I believe is that 7 generations, because it talks about there being 7 generations that Cain was cursed for. And if he, in my opinion, and according to some of these topics, if he would have died at the 7th generation, I believe that even the Messiah could have came at that time. But because that is in Genesis 4:15, it says, "Whoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." So actually, I believe that these ancient texts have actually said that Lamech was the one who killed Cain on accident. And that's what he was lamenting about, because he realized that Cain was supposed to die on his own in the 7th generation. Even though Lamech was in the 7th generation, he still killed him. And that promise that God said that you need to stay alive until the end of the 7th generation was not fulfilled. So now, even in the Bible, in the second half of that verse, it talks about 77 generations have to pass now, because that's the curse. It's a little trivial thing, but it's interesting because you look in Luke and etc., and you could see like some of these texts talk about there actually being 77 generations that pass before the Messiah comes. And it's like, oh, that makes sense.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll read a couple here. Bar Hebraeus, Genesis 4:24. It's an ancient commentator. He says, because sevenfold Cain will be requited, but Lamech 70 and 7, i.e., generations, according to the gospel genealogy of Luke, which begins with God the Father and ends with the Son made flesh, who blots out sin. And in the Armenian Apocrypha relating to Adam and Eve, we have, therefore Cain's sin were removed by the flood, but Lamech's needing the coming of Christ, for he was found to be a murderer after his example. In other words, he killed Cain. He was condemned to 77 vengeance, and Luke counts 77 patriarchs up to Christ, but to Cain he gave 7 vengeances.
Wow, this is something new to me.
Yeah, it's something that I threw in there.
Interesting, brother. What a very interesting point. So you are saying, and what you've discovered is that the 77 generations, the curse of Lamech killing Cain, that brings us to Messiah.
Yes.
In the as far as the generations from Adam to Messiah listed in Luke chapter 3, which exclude Cain from his genealogy.
Right, from being God.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And then could that have been another reason why Enoch was translated into heaven? Because he might have been the Joseph character, the Joseph figure in the virgin birth. You never know. Maybe God said, okay, well, Enoch, I'm just going to translate you. You had a purpose, but not anymore. So God took him away. It's just another perspective to think about it, and it's kind of fascinating. Because I always wondered why it took 2,000 years, after the time of Abraham, even to get to the Messiah, and there you go. There's one possible reason why, and another possible reason for that song of Lamech to be included in the Bible, because it was significant in this way.
Yeah, it is, and I never considered it that way. But it makes complete sense to me now. And 77 generations. Because even in the book of Enoch, we see that he is the 7th from Adam.
Mm-hmm.
In the book of Enoch, it speaks about 70 generations from there. Mm-hmm. And so, wow, yeah, that's amazing, because that is 77.
I think that's in the Midrash Rabbah too. I think Bershish 23:4. I think is the exact area.
Do you have that before you, by chance?
I'm sorry, I don't have it. No, I just have it as a footnote. I'm sorry, but I have the work, but I just don't have that right now to read. But
yeah, that would be interesting to look up.
So that would probably be another reason why the flood would, because God thought that, okay, well, maybe I had plans for a Messiah and plans for solving all these problems at the garden, but now that this was not fulfilled by Lamech, now I'm going to have to carry on this whole 70 more generations until we actually get this fulfilled. Because I don't believe that God allows anything not to be fulfilled according to his will. So it had to go.
Yeah, fully. Interesting. That's very cool.
Now, let's, what I believe that some of the texts talk about, we'll just get into it real quick, like the writings of Abraham. Let me think here. What else? Pseudo-Philo. Basically, what I believe happened, and we're talking about, it's called the Song of the Sword, and it's in the Bible where Lamech cries. The simplest way to say it, Lamech is all upset, is because he killed 2 people, and he claims one was killed to his wounding, and another one was killed according to his hurt. Okay, and that's basically all the Bible says about it. But if you look at some of these more ancient sources, you get a more in-depth rationale and understanding to what that all might mean. And what I believe it meant, to clarify things up, is that Cain was actually heading towards Lamech, okay, to visit him a while, and Lamech went blind, went blind after a while, and was hunting. And he used one of his nephews or a descendant of him to help him to point his arrow to shoot at the animals to help him get game, because he, like I said, it was hard for him to see. And when Cain was coming to go see him, he went under some bushes and went around something, and the child that was with him pointed towards the bushes and said, there's something there, shoot over there. And Lamech shot over there his arrow and accidentally killed Cain. And when he discovered that it was in fact this Cain, the world famous, infamous Cain, and all the things that went along with killing Cain, he was so upset that he started slapping his hands together and this and that, and he was just like getting violent. And he actually, when he was slapping his arms together, his little descendant that was with him, this child or this young man, he ended up killing him. What, son?
It was Tubal Cain.
Yeah, they say it was Tubal Cain. Yeah. So it's interesting how then that's where his cry comes, because he says, well, because for his wounding, for his lack of sight, he killed a man, and for his hurt, he ended up killing somebody else, that Tubal Cain or that young child. So it's just interesting.
Right.
That clarifies a lot of what this Bible quote says.
Yes.
And it's fascinating, because that's why I think we need to look beyond a little sometimes in some of these ancient texts. And again, a lot of people will say to us, oh, no, you shouldn't be looking at anything at the Bible because, you can't handle the truth. That's basically what I think a lot of the religious clergy have to say nowadays. And it's like, no, God gives us the spirit of God gives us discernment and the thoughts and our own rationales. And I think if we really want to figure it out, we can. And that's what discernment is. It's a gift. It's one of those spiritual gifts. So it's time to utilize it. And just beware of people who keep trying to tell you, no, you should not be looking anywhere else and this and that. I mean, it's almost like people trying to censor us nowadays. Same thing.
Yeah, and these stories are found in the book of Jasher and also the writings of Abraham. We just want to thank Jasher for the super chats. We appreciate you, brother, and thank you for your interactions with the listening audience and for being a longtime supporter. We appreciate all of you. Thank you so much, for everybody that supports us and helps us to do. Which I do want to bring something forward as well, that a while back we did a show where we were asking people to support our efforts in starting a school for the Kenyan orphanage, because we had to spend so much money anyways just sending the kids to school, which is mandated there, and you can't homeschool, so you have to pay to send the kids to these government mandated schools. But anyways, we were able to raise the funds to purchase the land, to then now we're going to be able to begin construction on the school there and at the Kenyan orphanage. And so just wanted to give a shout out and thank those of you that did support. And we did have an individual, a family step forward that wanted to support in large contribution those efforts. And so, and we've had that happen many times in the things and the work and the charitable focus that we have. And so we just want to, again, just acknowledge and thank all of you for supporting us in our work. And we love all of you. And, we do it ourselves. We have made a focus of Sacred Word Publishing and Endeavor Freedom is to give and to support to the orphans and the widows and those that are less fortunate. And so the Most High has blessed us, and for doing that. And so we thank all of you for supporting us in our focus and trying to do that as well. We love all of you. But anyways, back to you, Brett.
Okay. Going beyond this, the time had come for the flood. And another thought I want to throw by you, Zen, and get your thought about it, is when we talk about those 120 years before the flood, or it was in Genesis 6:3 actually, and it says, the Lord God said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his day shall be 120 years. What's your thought? Can you give me your thought on that real quick? I'm just curious.
Yeah, sure. There's two things that I believe are connected to that. And one is that I believe that the lifespan of humanity was reduced after the flood from 1,000 years to 120 years. And that by the time of Moshe, that the lifespan of humanity was reduced to 120 years, in that's exactly how long he lived. And from Shem lived 600 years, and by the time of Abraham lived 175 years. But by the time of Moshe, it was reduced to 120 years. But I also believe that 120 is a representation of Jubilees, and that there are 120 Jubilees in what is the duration of the Second World Age. And when I say the duration of the Second World Age, I'm meaning that we have in prophecy in 2 Peter that a day is as 1,000 years, Most High. And so the creation being established in 6 working days, I believe that the 120 Jubilees, 120 times 50 is 6,000. And so that gives us the 6,000 years of the Second World Age, and that it says after the 6,000 years, before the millennial reign, that there will be a new heaven and a new earth, that the earth will be destroyed in fervent heat, that the stars come crashing down to the earth, it will set it ablaze, and that this will be part of the wrath of God poured out on the wicked and those not written into the books of life. And so you add 1,000 years of the millennial reign to that, and you have the 7,000 years. And the millennial reign is the day of rest. It represents Sabbath. Again, a day is 1,000 years to the Lord. And so, in my opinion, that 120 there, in that he's going to give man reprieve, is a representation of this Second World Age, and that these 6,000 years we would live in the flesh. And then after the 6,000 years done, there would be the harvest, the return of the Messiah, that there would be, the separation of the wheat and the tares, the goat and the sheep, that those that are part of the wicked, they will be condemned. And those that are part of the righteous, they will inherit salvation and paradise. And so that's the beauty of it, in my opinion.
It's interesting how the 6,000 years, in my opinion, and the 1,000 years actually parallel the days of the week. You have your 6,000 and you have your 1 year, 1 day of rest.
Right.
Which is like the millennium. It's kind of interesting. I just find that parallel, and I just think that is kind of a fascinating parallel too.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a couple thoughts that I have on that. In the book of Jasher 5:11, we have, and the Lord granted them a period of 120 years, saying, if they will return, then will God repent of the evil so as not to destroy the earth. So that's another school of thought that people,
Yes.
that if they got better, etc. My take on it is a little different, and I think they were referring to Adam at that time, and I think that wasn't right before the flood. I just believe that it's giving us a time frame of the Watchers actually coming down, and it's about 120 years before Adam's death, and that's what I believe it was, because when they talk about he also his flesh and my spirit will not also always strive with man. You look at the way the word man was used in there, and it's supposedly a singular tense. So in other words, it possibly could mean the one man Adam. So that's the reason why I just have that subtle thought about that. Could that be at the time when Adam, God realized that Adam is not going to get any better, because Adam was still the patriarch for a long time. Everybody looked to him, and I guess in the book of the Cave of Treasures, he was actually buried in there, and they would always come to talk with him before to get advice and such. But he had his share of problems. I mean, Lilith and a lot of people seduced him into possibly some nefarious ways from time to time. So he wasn't perfect. So I just believe that at this time, it was the time that signified that Adam would be dead. He was the first man, of course, as we were talking about, that was significance, but he would actually have to die at this time. The promise would come true in the garden that he would eventually die. And the reason why I think it was noted as such is because I think it shows a significant time, and I think I've talked about this last time we were together, but when the Watchers actually came down, because we talk about the Nephilim in the verse before, and then we also talk about the 200 angels. We don't say 200 in the Bible, but we talk about the angels who came down, and the sons of God who went after the daughters of men. And then, as you said earlier, Zen, we talk about the mighty men who were born from them, etc. So the Rephaim. So I believe that was just showing a significant time and what was actually going on in this world, especially with these fallen terrestrial angelic creatures that were going around and trying to seduce people.
Yeah, I think also with that 120 years, that it was a reprieve given unto humanity, that if they would not sin and repent, that the Most High would not bring a flood upon the world. And because I've seen that in other places as well, and so I think you're right as in regard to that line of thinking. I'm not sure as far as with regard to the Adam specifically, but shoot, I was blown away by the whole 77 generation thing. So we're all still learning together, and I think that's really cool that we're able to bring forth information and to learn these different things together. It's
that's
awesome.
a fascinating thought, and it's interesting, and it is nice that it's in Luke and it's in the Bible where you can actually go look and see.
Oh, I was just gonna say also that I have a book out. It's called The Ancient Prophecies of Christ, where it speaks about the promise that the word of the Lord gave to Adam to enter into flesh and to take to be born of one of his descendant of his bloodline, which is what we see confirmed in Luke chapter 3. But anyways, in that, there's also confirmation, because the Bible says, out of the mouths of 2 or 3 witnesses shall the truth be established. But there's also genealogies found listed in both the Cave of Treasures and the Book of the Bee, which confirm Luke chapter 3. So
Oh, wow.
people can go and check those out
Interesting.
if you want to learn more.
Yeah,
But
I'd like to.
that information is found in my book on the ancient prophecies of Christ. But like I said, you can find them in the Cave of Treasures as well as in the Book of the Bee, which is very cool.
Did you hear that that story in the Book of the Cave of Treasures where it talks about in the sky before the flood there was an actual bow, but there was a bow with arrows. So it's just an interesting thought, and again, it's a story in one of these texts in the Book of the Cave of Treasures, but it actually says that there was a huge bow in the sky, and there were arrows paired with it this time, pointing down at the earth, and
wow.
it's a sign from God that basically saying, because God is giving them now warnings in the sky, saying you guys better behave.
Judgment.
And the thing that's fascinating about that thought is after the flood, what does Noah see? Noah sees a bow without arrow.
Yeah.
So in other words, peace has been established now.
Yeah, right.
It's a fascinating, again, it comes from one source. I don't see a lot of different sources that say this, but it's an interesting thought about it.
Yeah, it's an interesting, something that was preserved. And a lot of times we get that, we just get one source of information, and it's intriguing, what they capture and relate. Even we have, like, with the Chinese, they speak about the witness of there being this 3 hours of darkness, which is what occurred when Christ was crucified on the cross, and how all the stars made their appearance and were able to be seen. And there was prophetically a link to, the man God, that would be the lamb, that would bring a forgiveness of sins or something of that nature. So
yeah,
so a lot of interesting things get.
I also heard another thing about another attempt that God tried to do to the earth to stop them from actually continuing on what they were doing. It's actually found in the book of Jasher. Mind if I read that, Zen, real quick?
Please go right ahead, brother.
It says, "And on that day the Lord caused the whole earth to shake, and the sun darkened, and the foundations of the world raged, and the whole earth was moved violently, and the lightnings flashed, and the thunder roared, and all the fountains in the earth were broken up, such as was not known to the inhabitants before. And God did this mighty act in order to terrify the sons of man, that there might not be no more evil upon the earth."
Awesome.
That's Jasher 6:11. But
that's very cool, because even reading about the stories of the ancient judgments that were brought upon the Atlanteans, all that is very cool too, because we get knowledge and descriptions that we otherwise would not have, like with the scroll of Thothis and other things that the Colburn Bible and other accounts. And that's the fun, of reading these ancient accounts, reading extra biblical texts that most don't. And because of that, they don't know the fullness of the story.
Yeah. And you have to, in my opinion, I mean, it's good to actually look at this. But you have to use discernment, and God gives you that. I mean, because again, that's what people see. People, they think they hold the keys to the Bible, and some of these religious elites, and they don't want you to look to anything else because they want you to know exactly what they tell you and what they teach you. But again, that's kind of a power grab there. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, we're big boys and girls. We could look and make up our own minds, and I think that's important for us to just look around, and again, use that discernment that God gives us. That's very important, because that's what it's for. And just use a critical mind. You use sound judgments. God has given us a sound mind. It's even in the Bible. So I think that helps us figure out so much more. And when we make up our own minds and our own thoughts on it, that's where we get peace and understanding. And I think it's very, very, very important to just help us. All the material we can have is to help us make up our own mind.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's one footnote to that book of Jasher. In book of Jasher 6:12, it's kind of a funny conclusion that happened. It says, "And still the sons of men would not return from their evil ways, and they increased the anger of the Lord at that time,
Right.
and did not even direct their hearts to all this." So imagine that they didn't even care. They didn't even look really. They just kept on going, doing all these horrible things they were doing.
Right.
So, with these kind of pieces of information, it's kind of clear to see that God needed to do something, because nothing was going to change.
Yes.
It wasn't him being mean to the animals and being mean to people, and it was just so bad that. And it sounds awful so much like today too, the way we're hearing things. And
Absolutely.
If I was God and I saw these people bowing down to other idols and even going to Satanism and all these things and thinking that their man's rationale is superior and things, how would anybody of us feel if you were in a position such as that and everybody just spurned you? It'd be like, why would I want to help you? Why would I want to?
Science, they were doing all kind of things. They were corrupting everything.
Mm-hmm.
The miscegenation of the world. So.
And there was even more. There was I'm sure Zen you know about before the flood, actually some angelic heavenly angels actually came down and did some damage.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The giants at war with one another.
You want to tell us a little bit about some of how the angels came down and actually just kind of took out?
Yeah, certainly. In the scriptures, it speaks about how the four archangels, Raphael, Phanuel, Uriel, and Gabriel, that
Mm-hmm.
given a commission by God to go and bind Azazel and to place him into the earth and to Dudael. And the four angels of that were locked into the river Euphrates, which so many people are speaking about nowadays with the prophecy of the drying up of the Euphrates River and some of the weird things that have been coming forth. The voices, some people are hearing the voices of the condemned coming up through the ground. But anyways, and yes, and so some of the archangels were sent to lead the giants into war, the different giant tribes into war with one another. And I believe that this is connected to the story we get of the lost book of Og of Bashan. Because in this book, there's a setting during the flood. The rain is coming down, and the giants are aligned in battle to fight one another. It's a faction led by Nimrod, not the Nimrod of the Tower of Babel, but Nimrod it was a giant, and he was called the rebellious one. And then Og and Augeas, his son, they were at war with this particular Nimrod and these particular factions of giants. And so, that whole story is very, very interesting. Alleluia asks, where is Dudael located? I believe this particular Dudael is there where the river Euphrates is located, and that there is connection between the four angels being locked away into the river Euphrates and what is specified as Dudael. And I also believe that in regard to the bottomless pit and where Tartarus lies, that this is at the North Pole.
Oh,
that
yeah.
that there is a hollow earth entrance into the north, and that when you read Isaiah chapter 14, we see that how how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning.
Oh yeah.
He said that he was gonna ascend unto the heavens and establish his throne in the heavens above the mount of the congregation and in the sides of the north. Again, the sides of the north are where the firmament comes together in apex.
Yeah.
And that is right below where Polaris is located.
Oh
And
yeah.
so he is mentioning, and the mount of the congregation also is located. It's the lodestone magnetic mountain, which is found at the North Pole. And so that is the mount of the congregation, the sides of the north. And that is also where you said, but thou shalt be condemned to hell, to the bottomless pit, and the sides of the pit. And so he was, instead of ascending into heaven above the mount of the congregation, he was cast down into Sheol.
Straight down from there.
Yes, straight down from there. And that the domain of Legion is in the interior of the earth, Sheol or Tartarus or Gehenna or whatever you want to call it. It's all the same thing.
May I read something real quick?
Yeah, you got just a few minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think Nimrod is not just necessarily a person, it's more of a title, like the rebel. So we have more than one Nimrod, especially the one after the flood. So anyhow, here is from First Enoch, or Enoch 9, 1 through 10, and then verse 15. So I put it all together, but it's interesting. Then Michael, Gabriel, Suriel, and Uriel looked down from heaven and saw the wickedness which Azazel had done to the world. And they heard that appeal which the souls of the dead were making to heaven. And they reported the matter to the Most High. Then God commanded Raphael to bind Azazel, hand and feet. Gabriel was sent to destroy all the children of fornication. And Michael was sent to bind Shamhazi, and others in order to imprison them under the mountains of the earth for 70 generations, which is kind of interesting. There you go. We have 70 generations again, after which time they were to be taken to the abyss of fire and tortured there forever. So that kind of throws me again, that 70 generations. I'm thinking, could that be because of this whole Lamech thing again?
Yeah, I think that, again, the second world age, and not just Lamech and the curse on Cain, but that, the second world age would be that 7,000-year duration, and that at the end would be their annihilation, which is the second death. And we see that after the millennial age, that Satan will be loose for little season, and that Legion will come forth to try and to test and to deceive the nations once more, which is like, God is on the earth, the Most High, Yeshua, the Holy Spirit are all in the New Jerusalem with us and with the nations of the world. How could you be deceived by Satan unless, of course, you're dedicated to the evil one, you're his bloodline? That's the only thing that makes sense to me, that because they purposely follow him no matter what. But the rest of the nations, how could you be deceived?
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
One thing I hear that they always say, they say quite a bit today, is that Jesus never went down and preached to the spirits in prison. But it's interesting. First Peter 3, 19 through 20 just says it's fairly obvious that there were actually down there.
Oh, without a doubt. Have you read the Gospel of Nicodemus yet?
No,
You got to read that. It elaborates completely on this story.
Really?
Yeah, it gives you the full details of this story. You got to read the Gospel of Nicodemus.
I will put that on my list right now.
Yeah, read it one afternoon. You'll be able to finish it easy.
Okay.
And it'll help you to understand this full story.
That's great.
Without
Great
a doubt, he fulfilled the promise to Adam of going down into Sheol and freeing he and his righteous descendants.
Mm-hmm.
And taking them up to returning them to their first estate. We're at the end, brother.
Okay, it says sometimes we're disobedient when once the long suffering of God waited in the days of Noah. It says it in 1 Peter 9, or 1 Peter 3. We have it all right there. But okay, Zen.
All right. Good night.
I was
all.
fascinated.
God
Good
bless.
topic.
Shalom.
All right. Hello.
Good night.
In a couple months.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.